Okay, it's 18:02, so we can start this meeting of the Master Plan Committee on Wednesday, March 13th, 2024. Let the record reflect the members that are here. And we will follow the agenda. Number one, land use, housing and economic development deep dive by Serpent. I will turn that over to the group.
Hello, my name is Maria Jones. I'm the Public Engagement and Communications Planner at SERPED and have been working now for about a year with the town of Freetown on the master plan, the community master plan. So today is kind of like we're in our feedback portion. We'll get into that there. But really going over the view of like what we've heard so far from the community and kind of what we want to end up in the final master plan, and especially workshopping this with the master plan committee. So again, project overview, we're just going to go over existing conditions around land use, housing, and economic development. Do this kind of build out analysis exercise and then go into these, again, early draft goals and strategies. So people in the front probably know, but the people in the back, master plan is kind of a roadmap for the future to guide Freetown. Essentially, a lot of people like to think of it as almost like a guidebook for planning, so people can understand how certain things in town function. So these 7 elements: land use, housing, economic development, open space, recreation, natural cultural resources, public services and facilities, and transportation. Again, these are important things for a community to plan for in the future and to know what these things look like right now. So as I mentioned, we kicked off this plan last year in 2023. Where we, again, did this kind of literature review, understood the map of the town and the different layers in the town as well. Then we entered kind of this discovery phase. We also did that a little bit in the kickoff where we went around town. Now we're here in the feedback phase, kind of going deep. And then finally, we're going to review the plan later on this year and present it to the master plan committee and to the planning board for adoption. So obviously engagement is a really important component of this plan. Talking to folks, I hope everybody has filled out the survey and has participated in the map. So like I said, we have this master plan committee, we have local champions who not only work in the town, we have a citizen participant as well, and really advise on the development of this master plan. Additionally, we obviously work with Victoria regularly, who's an excellent town planner and kind of provides us with the information that we need to know about Freetown. This is us, SERPED, so the Southeastern Regional Planning and Economic Development District. So we serve 27 towns across Southeast Massachusetts, and we assist with things like master plans, housing production plans. Victoria's one person, and so sometimes it's helpful to have another set of eyes or people who kind of understand how to look at this data more intensely. So we have my colleague Philip here and my colleague Chris, and these other great folks who've worked with us to develop what we've worked on so far. So as I mentioned, we've been out in the community. Here you can see Philip enjoying the beautiful, I don't know, what was it? Like
the
strawberry shortcake, yes.
Yeah, there's a strawberry festival. We went to the charity fire police softball game.
Yeah.
Library, council on aging. So
Yeah.
everywhere around town.
Yeah, as much as we can. And we hope to continue doing this throughout the plan as well. And would love to hear of any suggestions where we should be at as well. Like I said, back in the fall, we had this discovery open house where we talked to some folks. Here are some example of the boards, but we kind of set this whole room up with a lot of the information that we're actually looking at today, to inform people of these existing conditions and to see what their vision is for Freetown, very base level kind of stuff. We also try to be online. We get that people can't come to meetings necessarily on a Wednesday. So sharing information with people like your select board members, and having a project webpage that kind of has a hub of all this information and regular updates on what's going on. So the survey is obviously very crucial for us to understand like specific answers to specific questions. We've gotten 313 respondents so far. We opened back in September, and we really have heard from a pretty diverse set of people, young families, seniors, and residents really who've lived here for a very long time. And what we've learned is people really love visiting local businesses that exist here, hiking and exploring the beautiful nature around, and really appreciating the small town character. And people really would like to see more of those local businesses that they can visit, specifically restaurants and cafe options. And a place for the community to gather together was something that really stood out, where folks can really, whether it be a restaurant, whether it be the library, a place for young and old to gather together. We've had this map open as well, that's still open for folks to kind of plug and play where they want specific things. So here we can see like some businesses, or hear people like have comments about open space. These were the top 2 like comments that people really want to see useful business here on South Main Street. And people want to see a family-owned grocery store here on Braley Road. This is just the map again, and everybody can go in and it's very simple, just plug and play. So this is also data that we captured from in-person events as well. So it's very simple. I would encourage everybody to use it.
That's on the town website.
Yes. So from this kind of feedback that we've gathered, we've really learned that Freetown values protecting natural resources and open space, improving housing affordability for particularly for younger families and seniors, and welcoming new business and developing a town center, but specifically local business. So the way that you'll see this presentation run is kind of taking these summaries of the community priorities and linking them to what we kind of workshop are these early draft goals. And obviously this is like early draft goals, so we're here to hear from you to know how we can refine them to make them the best for the final master plan. So here are just some demographics again, overview. We're gonna get really used to this map here. Again, Freetown, you all know it, beautiful. Here are some photos we've captured with our drone, and RIP Profile Rock. So just basic, we know that Freetown is growing, but at a relatively slower rate than average. We see the greatest growth change between 2000 and 2010 here. Oops. And then along with that, sorry, let me just move the zoom thing here. Along with that, we can see that particularly the senior population in Freetown is really growing. You can see that all these other demographic numbers for people under 20 and people between 20 and 59 have really shrunk in from 2000 to 2021. And the median age overall has gone from 38 to 42. Here's some information also on school enrollment. Again, the kind of people under 20 has gone down. So obviously school enrollment has gone down. And yeah, so here's kind of where we enter our first chapter, land use. This is kind of gonna help us understand how Freetown is going to manage future land use and how it currently is using it as well. So these are kind of the different uses that exist in Freetown today. We see obviously the biggest portion is this kind of open space and institutional land, which is the state forest, and kind of these institutional and business corridors in Asona and in East Freetown. Here's kind of like a clearer picture, like breakdown by breakdown of the different land uses. So the second highest is residential, and then we see very little commercial. So again, a breakdown of the different commercial and industrial uses. This kind of red, this bright red is business. We have the general use, 2 different kind of industrial uses, as well as open space and village business district. And then these are kind of the residential districts. So the difference between these 2, I believe my colleague Philip can speak a bit more on that, but is kind of you get a bit more flexibility with the lot coverage with village residential, but the square footage remains the same in both. Another tool that we use to kind of look at land use in Freetown that we Serpent have been helping with folks since 2007 and kind of these priority areas. These are updated every 10 years. We're actually in the middle of an update right now. But this is very high level, not binding at all, seeing where we want to preserve in town and where we want to develop. So that's that purple here. And the green is where we want to preserve as well. So I find it very useful. And this is kind of, again, the culmination of what we've learned, kind of similar to the exercise with the PDA and PVA, but a bit more in depth. So identifying these areas where suburban neighborhoods exist or where civic centers could exist. So essentially what we've learned, given that feedback we've had from the community, kind kind of map visualized, if you will. So again, we've learned that Freetown wants to maintain a small town, family-oriented community. We'd want to introduce and control growth in the town center, and we want to preserve Freetown's historic and scenic open space. So that kind of translates to these early draft goals where we want to focus development in these chosen priority areas such as village centers and business corridors, and protect Freetown's small character by preserving open space and allowing for modest growth in more rural, agricultural, and suburban areas of town. So I'll pass it over to my colleague, Chris. We'll go over for housing.
Thanks, Maria. And thank you everyone for coming out tonight. Really appreciate it. As Maria said, this next session we'll be looking at the existing conditions for housing, as well as to address needs and requirements of residents. Next slide, please.
You want to come up here?
Oh, yeah. All right, so this first slide that we have up here gives a pretty good overview of the housing typology that we can kind of find in Freetown, as you can see from the map as well as from the graphic on the bottom. A majority of Freetown's housing stock is considered one unit detached, or as you guys may know, like single family homes. Like I said, this is the predominant kind of typology of housing types in Freetown. There's a few other types that are also around, duplexes, and mobile homes and such, but it's mainly single family detached. Now, for housing breakdown, Freetown as of 2021 has nearly 3,400 households, and about 90% of homes are or of households are owner occupied, so that means 10% are renter occupied. So some of the data to the right, we can see that average household size has declined slightly over the last 21 years, going from 2.86 residents per household to 2.69. Some other noteworthy data points include the increase of households that include a person of 65 and older. So that's going from 26% to 32% since 2000. We can also see there's been a pretty significant decrease of residents that are under 18 years old. We can see it's gone from, or there was a 17% decrease, so that means 40% down to 23% over the last 21 years. So let's talk a little bit more about the homes these residents are buying. As we can see here, Freetown, especially more recently, has started to see an increase in housing prices along with the state. We can also see here that housing prices in Freetown don't necessarily match up with Massachusetts in terms of cost, but they do match in terms of the rising costs. So we can especially see this over the last 3 years, and this is pretty consistent with other trends in the region as well. So looking at cost burden data, so it's important to establish what being cost burden is. So essentially, a household is considered cost burdened if they're spending over 30% of their annual income on basic costs like a mortgage, rent, utilities. So important to kind of describe that ahead of this, but some other important data points associated with that are that the median household income are nearly $110,000 a year. Now, looking at the pie charts here, we can see that in terms of the cost burden data, we can see slightly over 25% of homeowners would be considered cost burden, and we can see over 50% of renters would be considered cost burden. So kind of moving along to that kind of need for affordable housing, it's probably good to talk about the elephant in the room, 3A. I'm sure many of you have heard about it. If not, essentially, there is a Mass General Law that was passed recently that stipulates that MBTA communities shall have at least one zoning district of reasonable size in which multifamily housing is permitted as of right. So what does that mean for Freetown? So pretty much some of the requirements are that Freetown should have a minimum of 50 acres of at least one district dedicated to having multifamily as of right and having a density of 15 dwelling units per acre. The potential issues if this is not passed in town is that there could be potential issues with securing especially state funding, like grants like MassWorks. And this is not to say that the town wants legislation in the town of, or in the context of Freetown is the amendment of the planned mixed use district or the PMUD. That's not to say that development will happen overnight or that this these 750 units, so that's the 50 acres. So that's 15 units per acre, so 15 times 50, 750 need to be created. It's just a matter of capacity for the town to be able to create these housing units. As I previously said, talking about the PMUD, so Serped Us has been working with the town to ID a potential location for this new zoning district that's compliant with 3A. And I'm sure many of you know that the town is now working towards amending the PMUD to get this district in to comply with section 3A. Stay tuned for public hearings and informational sessions. They will be happening in April. So yeah, and so we've talked about single family homes on large lots. We've talked about multifamily housing. I think it's important to also talk about the other types of housing that kind of go in between, that kind of get lost in the fold of what's already there and what is starting to be built up a bit more. So this is typically referred to as missing middle housing, and that's in reference to single family and multifamily kind of being in the middle there. So it adds more variety for specific groups of people to pick from different housing typologies. Specifically seniors, young families, first-time home buyers. And some of these different types of housing provide a good middle for people to transition from different types of housing as well. And a good example of that is, excuse me, ADUs as well, which I know the town is considering looking into for potential zoning changes. Another kind of tactic to help increase housing stock in town is to implement a potential open space and residential design or OSRD. So like Maria had said, many residents were concerned about the destruction of like natural resources and features. This is a very robust way of preserving natural landscapes. As we can kind of see from these two diagrams, this top one, a conventional subdivision, maximizing the amount of space you have, large lot sizes and the like. We can see from this bottom one here, so that is the conservation subdivision that is kind of allowable due to the open space residential design. We can see that there's more centralized nodes of housing units on smaller lot sizes. And what this does is it helps to preserve those natural features we can see from the two diagrams. There would be more of like tree cover as a result of that. So that's definitely something that could be considered when trying to simultaneously preserve the environment while also building new housing. Like we said before, residents have definitely been vocal about protecting the environment, also creating more housing options for seniors and young families, as well as creating affordable housing for seniors and veterans, as well as ensuring housing stability for future generations, that being people aren't priced out of the town and are forced to move away. So two of the draft goals that we've discussed are, we'll get into this a bit later too, are to produce a range of housing types that meet the needs of seniors, first-time home buyers, families with children, and other types of families. And the complementary goal there is to create more affordable, income-restricted housing that maximizes access to services and minimizes impacts on the environment and existing neighborhoods. So now is also a good segue to get into the sort of economic development side of things. So looking at existing conditions for that, as well as to talk about how existing businesses can be supported, as well as attracting new businesses to create tax revenue for the town. So contextually looking at Freetown, we can see here that from this first pie chart, a large proportion of jobs include transportation and warehousing. This definitely includes the Stop and Shop distribution center. And something to note too, that information or that data is included in the left chart, so the pie chart, but it isn't included in the top employers. So some of you might have caught already that Stop and Shop isn't listed among the top employers in town. We got the data from the state. Sometimes there's discrepancies there. That's probably why it wasn't listed. But aside from that, we do have the 6 other top employers in town. So that includes like the Free Lake Regional School District, BAMSI, Bay State Drywall, Freetown Elementary School, Landscape Products and Services, and Resendez K&R Incorporated. So I'm sure many members of the MPC have seen this chart before from the survey. We were able to simultaneously survey business owners in town, and we were asking about perceptions of different aspects of doing business in town. Some really important ones of note, probably the most vocal aspect of this was the how tax rates and paying taxes has impacted businesses. We can see here at the bottom here, there was a huge amount of business owners that had said that that aspect was fair and or poor. So that's definitely something to consider. And 2 ones that were a little surprising were ease of permitting and working with town. We can see here, those were kind of the next 2, like, not as, they weren't as like homogenous across in terms of being good or bad, which was interesting. And ease of permitting, working with the town, kind of go hand in hand. Another big surprise was town infrastructure, considering like there is a lot of like the need for development in terms of like water, sewer to bring in new businesses and keep some businesses here as well. So now moving on to taxes. As we can see here, Freetown has a split tax rate. Commercial tax is about $20, while residential is 10. In terms of the other towns around Freetown, for commercial taxes, Freetown sits about in the middle of those 6 towns mentioned below, so Acushnet, Berkeley, Fall River, Lakeville, Rochester, Somerset. And for residential, it actually has the lowest residential tax rate of all of those towns as well. And I don't think there were any of those comparable towns that were below $11 per 1,000 in assessed value. So definitely something to note. So as we've kind of heard from our engagement activities, as well as from the survey, a lot of residents would like to attract new services and amenities like restaurants to town. Attract and support small businesses while simultaneously improving infrastructure and tax rates for existing businesses. So from this, we extrapolated these 3 goals to try and meet these needs. The first being support vibrant town centers in East Freetown and Assonet. The second, to expand key infrastructure services such as water and sewer to meet demands for economic development and make Freetown an attractive place to live and do business. And to support existing institutions and the local business community by incentivizing existing businesses to stay while attracting new businesses. So from this, I'm going to pass it off to Philip, who's going to discuss the build-out analysis.
Also, very quickly, I know it's very informal, but we're just going to pass around a little sign-in sheet, just to help us kind of understand who's here. And you can also add your email if you want future updates or future workshops and other engagement opportunities. Before I move on, I just want to ask, does anyone have any questions about what Maria and Chris just presented?
Yeah, my brother lives in Milton and he's been
Excuse-
talking to me about 3A quite a
Excuse me?
bit.
Could you state your name, please, for the record?
Ann
Yep.
Pizzera, 19 Island Road, Freetown. Thank you. He lives in Milton and they recently had a vote in Milton, and people voted against all of this. And, they're uniting with other communities because what they were told is not really what it's supposed to be. Are we involved in this because of the train? Because they're saying now that they don't have a station in Milton, so they should not be thrown into giving up land without a station. Now, do we fall into that, or how do
So-
we sit with all of that?
Freetown is currently working on becoming compliant with section 3A. It is, the development of Milton is, it's kind of ongoing, so it's kind of like we're all monitoring what the state is doing. I think the state's intention is to go down very, very hard onto Milton and ensure that they are compliant. Freetown will have a station, so it is like a natural location for potential additional development. And
But the people voted against it.
so the
They
people
have
voted
voted.
against it, but
They
the
haven't
town, the planning board and even the select board did vote for it. And then there was a referendum that happened.
Even though the people voted against it.
So I'm not sure what the voter turnout for that particular ballot measure was, but it's probably not every single person.
You
But
just said to get involved before it gets too late, and then it's harder to go back.
Yeah, so
Well-
in section 3,
It's too late.
We are going in the planning board through that process right now. We're going for pre-approval on what we've already come up with.
Because he calls me all the time, he says, get involved, don't let it happen to us, you know, it's too late. I guess they threatened funding, taking away funding from them and all this stuff.
yes, they can,
Oh,
yes.
it's so involved now.
So
I mean,
with this plan, the master plan, that's open for feedback. So the 3A stuff, that's already closed for feedback, like they just said, it's already done and going through the planning board. And like we said, there'll be public hearings on like what that means later in April, so people can, and we're working with the town, like we said.
But the thing that bothers me is like, I'm the only one from my neighborhood here. They didn't know a thing about it. I mean, I only know about it because my brother is directly involved in.
That's why
this
we
in
want to help to
Milton.
get the word out.
You know,
about the
and we gotta
session.
get the word out because people in my neighborhood, nobody knows about it.
This is the master plan for the town. That's what this is. 3A is a separate
People on it.
piece of zoning that was going through the planning board that we will present public meetings for.
Yeah, but it's already too late, like she said. I mean,
Too late for what?
for like 3A, like nobody wants.
Well, we have to bring it in front of town meeting and have it approved, so you have a say there.
Yeah, you think that's gonna fly?
I don't know. We haven't presented any public meetings to anybody yet.
It's gonna have to fly.
See, what happened was like,
Exactly.
So before this
Exactly.
kind of goes into
It's gonna-
a
Yeah, let,
3A world.
okay, I'm sorry.
we're trying to do the master plan here. That's only a small component of it. I mean, it can ask pointed questions, but if
I'm
we can
sorry
keep
if I
on,
interrupted, but.
no, it's okay.
It is a component of land use and zoning and housing, as well as economic development, which is the topic of today's little meeting. What I want to say is that for Freetown, essentially what they're doing is taking an existing overlay district that was intended for transit-oriented development and just making sure it is compliant with the kind of measures of 3A. So it's not kind of like putting it, randomly in town. So where this little red bit is, that is rough, or actually, sorry, around here. That is roughly where the location of PP Mud overlay district is. And again, it's just to allow housing. Housing might not actually get developed, and the town is not required to actually build that housing. I'll answer a few more questions about 3A, and then I'm happy to chat afterwards about
Yeah.
that too.
My question isn't actually about 3A AB side for Freetown, side of town. It's about senior housing and how we're comparing to other communities that look like us structurally. Cause I know that was a big concern and a big want for the community. So I didn't know, in your work with other communities, are we all sharing that? Is that a concern that's generally around the area? This is something that's unique to us that we're really challenged with, because we had that 30% increase in people who are, aging in our community, so just curiosity.
Yeah, it is a very common issue across all of our communities. The number of households with children are decreasing. You saw the school enrollment data. School enrollment is decreasing, and the share of households with people who are 65 plus is increasing really quickly. And of course, seniors have kind of different needs depending on where they are in their life, whether it's assisted living or just 55 plus communities. And different seniors kind of have different priorities. Some want to downsize, some want to move somewhere that's a little bit more walkable. So that's kind of what we're trying to figure out and try to introduce more ways to develop new senior housing. Any other questions I can answer before we move on? Okay, great. So before we kind of get into the discussion part about the goals and strategy, we just want to present a little build out analysis. So what is this build out analysis? Sounds kind of scary. It's essentially a ballpark estimate of what kind of remaining development capacity in town is based on your current zoning. So today, someone using the zoning today could build what could be built here. So it will look scary, but really the market forces probably just aren't kind of in favor, or someone owns that land, is not really, developing it today. So again, just because there are these units here doesn't mean they're actually being developed. But this is a very useful way for us to understand, okay, how restrictive is the zoning? How permissive is it? Does kind of the current zoning match the needs of Freetown? So first, we just took all the vacant parcels in town. So the ones that are kind of these darker gray with a pink outline, those are developable vacant parcels. And then parcels that do not have kind of a gray are non-developable, either because they have too much wetlands on them or they have no frontage. We also took a look at underdeveloped parcels to kind of determine that. We just did a very, very basic calculation, and it's something called an improvement ratio. So an improvement ratio is just the value of improvements. So improvement is like a building, a house, or a store, and divided by the land value. If it's under 0.5, we'll just say, hey, this is potentially like someone might want to redevelop it. So wetlands, we obviously you can't build on wetlands. That is just a mass general law. And there are a lot of restrictions building within a certain distance of it. So those are shown in this kind of lime green. And when we take them out, this is kind of like what's left of, oh, these are what the parcels that are kind of in play. So in terms of like residential capacity, I would say it runs between probably like 180 to 260. The reason I say that is there's a parcel here that was potentially identified for an adult retirement community, but I don't think there's a contiguous amount of land that's not wetland that could be built upon. So that didn't seem very feasible kind of from actually taking a look at it. The way this number was calculated was that Freetown has a minimum lot size of 70,000 square feet. That is approximately like 1.75 acres. 1.6 acres, and that's a pretty substantial size. So essentially, you can't subdivide a large lot unless you have kind of multiple. Each unit has like 1.6 acres. So we took the developable parcel, divided it by 70,000 square feet to see how many subdivisions you could get on a certain piece of land. And generally there were not a lot of just empty parcels right for development that you could do this on. Most of the development capacity is on existing parcels. So there are parcels that are under 70,000 square feet, but if they're already created, you can grandfather them in and build a single family home on them. You can see there's like a little cluster here. These are existing kind of subdivisions within an existing neighborhood. So all that adds up to about 260 units spread across all of Freetown. And some of these are duplexes. There's maybe one or two multifamily based on kind of the zoning calculations that are in there. In terms of commercial capacity, there's not really much space in town to develop a new commercial building, given that similar 70,000 square foot. Most of this capacity is probably just coming from the, I think it's called Copart, the big
Yep.
car auction lot. And commercial capacity is important because that is what lowers your tax rates and keeps the lights on in Freetown. Because commercial development brings a lot of economic development and also tax revenue. So that was the bill out analysis. The main kind of takeaways are Freetown lot sizes are intentionally very large, the minimum lot size. That's both a benefit, but also creates issues depending on what your goals are. If you don't want any development, then it's pretty great. Like, there's not a lot of places you can build new housing, and that might be great because you're going to be preserving agricultural land, forests, open land. But then we run into an issue where if we're not creating new housing, then there's like, we have a housing affordability and supply issue. So how do we really balance that? How can we update zoning to balance those different priorities? Any questions about the build out analysis calculation? There's a lot of like math and stuff that kind of went behind it. I'm happy to explain any.
I guess a clarification. When you come up with the gauge of 261 units, were you considering land that could be developed or like a road put in, or were you only considering what was on basically existing roadways now?
I believe I only considered parcels that had an existing frontage.
Okay. So I guess my question would be, if you had a parcel of land, very theoretically, of 50 acres, that part of it was on a road, that would be considered developable.
So repeat the question.
Okay, if you had say you had a parcel of land that was 50 acres,
Mhm.
and it was, of course, it had frontage on a roadway. Were you considering that even though there was no roadways within the 50-acre parcel?
If it touches a road, then it was considered.
Okay, all right.
So if it was like completely landlocked, that just didn't show up. Another issue with this kind of little model is it's really hard to kind of understand how someone could aggregate parcels. So if someone like, combine landlocked parcels with something that fronted a road, it's possible that might get developed.
I was just,
Yeah,
so
that's a
we're
great
getting at that.
question. I would say a lot of the landlocked parcels, you can see there's the wetlands just cover quite a lot of those and make them really hard to develop around.
Just to expand on that question. So if you had 50 acres that had, say, 175 frontage, which is the bylaw in town, would you consider that as only 2 lots to that 261, or would you consider that 31 lots?
So if those 50 acres.
50 acres, you have the correct frontage for just a single house. Were you considering, like you said, a road going into it to create 31 acres or just 31 houses or just 2 houses?
That would come up as 31 houses.
It would.
Yep.
Okay.
I was like saying, what if someone had all the capacity to build?
This is almost the worst case.
Right. That's what I was.
Yes.
I thought it would be much higher.
Yeah.
Any other questions? I know this is like very in the weeds, so we call it the deep dive. Great. So,
You want to take over?
yeah, for now, we're gonna take a small break. Because what we're gonna do next is just kind of go through these early draft goals and strategies. We showed the different goals after each of the sections on land use, housing, economic development. We just want you to get a chance. I think everyone should get a copy, if you have enough. So read through those and we'll reconvene in maybe like 10 minutes or so. And happy to answer any questions. If anyone doesn't feel comfortable just speaking up, I will just be around.
That's all I got.
I have a general question.
Yeah.
Actually, so on all these towns, for these master plan committees that you've been doing, it's great that we're plan ahead for the 3A, or we planned ahead a while ago for the PMA. Biggest problem is you need a developer to actually build it.
Yep.
Which material costs, hardships, and all of that is practically impossible, but I know the state does offer grants for, say, housing authorities, right? Have you seen any towns develop a housing authority within town to do this instead of a private developer?
To develop what kind of?
55 and older housing, or something like that.
I don't.
You mean it would be
A town.
a town, official town
Correct.
commit group that would,
A housing
the
authority.
housing authority that would buy the property and develop it.
Correct. Because the biggest problem is you have these private developers that actually want to do work in Freetown and build these, things, which obviously hasn't happened. We've had PMUD for,
Yeah.
Over 5 years, it's been a while.
yeah.
It's been years.
Then before that, we had the North Main Street over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
None of that has ever been used, so by
You're over
providing
there,
guidance, gives us direction, but obviously we've seen development not happening. With the T, maybe something different.
Yeah. it's
But
probably right over.
That's where I'm at. That's towns taking it in their own control and started doing their own projects like that.
I know of one example recently, I think we were working with Norton, their housing authority was looking into purchasing some parcels to develop. I think the roadblock they were running into was sewer, potentially running through there.
Right. Well, Piedmont, we have sewer, luckily, for the most part.
Yeah,
I don't think it runs.
We don't
but-
have time.
I think it's south of it, right?
I mean, but
Yeah,
it's
stop.
easier to,
Oh, okay.
it's available, potential work.
I think that was part of the mindset, right, for it to be down
Yeah,
there.
exactly.
Yeah, but yeah, I think that has been the biggest hurdle for any towns that have been trying to take that on, not only also just general cost as well as
Right.
to be able to purchase land and develop it.
Because Freetown does have technically a housing authority, do they?
Yeah, technically, yeah,
Which-
they don't meet, they don't, yeah.
That's actually one of the strategies we bring up too, is to potentially kind of revamp the housing authority to be more active. We'll kind of talk about it in a little bit.
Yeah, no, I'm
Yeah.
just curious because, you know, if you design it, they should come, but they don't.
Yeah, that's
That's the biggest thing, private developers. So if the towns take it into their own hands, because right now we have a requirement in 3A, right, that the planning board's going. In 5 years from now, if no one's ever built there, they're gonna come back and say, force the town to somehow build something. I know we can't speak what the government's gonna do in 5 years, but
Yeah, I don't know if they can compel like a town overnight to like force them to build units overnight, but I think that's like the biggest stipulation in 3A is it's not mandating units to be created. It's just mandating a capacity to be kind of
well,
set.
we all see the housing crisis, I think, coming fairly strong.
Mhm.
So that, I'm just wondering if the town could kind of just take the reins on instead of hoping someone's gonna come in and build it.
Something we can look into as well. Like I said, there's that Norton example, but it always comes up with the problem of cost as well. So maybe
Well,
somewhere,
nice.
yeah. Maybe somewhere closer to Boston that might have funding access and done something.
Yeah, or already established housing authorities like Fall River or the cities and. Bedford.
Yeah.
But so, yeah, it's just smaller towns, I can't imagine would be doing that.
Right.
Yeah,
That's the only thing that would make more sense.
I think in an ideal world, if the town had already control over some land and wanted to prioritize for affordable housing, they could partner with a private developer, and because, you know, they're essentially offering the land basically for free.
But
that
then we would
lowers
need
the
it for, like an affordable housing bylaw to, like.
Yeah, allow
I
it,
know, yeah. It's a catch 22 no matter which way you look at it, except for the 3A that we already have and revamping our housing.
Depends where they bought the property, and reselling it for denser housing.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Government entity, they can do whatever. Unfortunately. It's,
I mean, let's bought it here.
right, which there shouldn't be any, well, nowadays, there won't be any big. I mean, the town doesn't have much land left besides this complex. The Legion on the other side.
Where the town beach is pretty large.
What?
So, where the town beach is.
On Long Pond, right?
Oh, over there, that's
Yeah.
a sports complex.
So yeah, it's an open space. It's a little bit scary to open space to develop.
Yeah.
But other than that, there's really not much more town land.
No, just smaller parcels.
Dumb question. Did the town own this land? They acquired it for the police station.
I think
They
we
did own-
owned it,
They
right?
did own.
Because we've owned, yeah.
And there's no more land that way or that way.
But it's.
Well, there's a-
There is, but there's a lot of wetlands.
Here. Kind of like the highway.
Yeah,
Oh, there is.
Yeah.
Triangle between.
And all that land behind the fire station is town.
Yeah.
yes,
The-
It's all wetland.
yeah, but yes, a lot of it is wetland.
So maybe the biggest thing is based on these maps, to revamp conservation, let us build in wetlands.
Okay.
I mean, just looking at those maps, it's absurd how much wetlands. are.
I mean, the Freetown State Forest takes up a big portion
Yeah.
of town too.
Nothing to ever do.
No, of course, but I'm just saying, like, when you really look at it, it's a lot.
We're running into that with other, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Just driving along. Town roads to see. The state, would it be good for the state forest to allow building along the street? Like one. People back, like, say, like.
Kind of goes
One
against that
step.
plan that they had, yeah.
Yeah, because, you know, you have to, yeah, in Massachusetts. But of course, the other thing is, so much of Freetown is redevelopable. Redeveloped. That's, I'm saying the word, but, you know. You, in the future, just think of a community, you know, where 70,000 square foot lots now. You know, could the cost of land be so high that people come in, buy two, buy homes, tear them down and build something new?
Well, it'd probably be like a one-to-one placement, right? They would buy like a tiny house and then just build a McMansion.
What have you guys seen now? I don't see newer housing being as large as it used to be. Like people building larger houses.
Actually,
Well,
housing, the
Long
house
down.
sizes are going way up. They're
Way up?
The other day.
Did you say way up?
Down.
Prices are sizes.
Size-
You're
Sizes,
talking
sizes, not
not
prices, no.
houses.
I'm talking size.
Size, yeah.
You're saying they're going up?
I would say they're going down, but.
No, they're going
prices,
down.
Right?
New
Cost is
construction
going up.
houses, they're getting a little bit smaller.
Yeah, that's
Not a
what I'm
lot.
thinking.
Yeah.
50
Maybe
square
like,
feet.
maybe like recently, I actually did like a really interesting study, but I mean, it's a totally different community, but like the median, like the average square foot of a house was like increased, like doubled. But that was Arlington, which is very different.
Oh, yeah, that.
Yeah, but it was
Around here,
interesting,
the
even
new
though.
houses, I don't see some big houses that.
Now, look at our plus 10.
But, one other thing I wanted to comment on, I know you were talking about the taxes in town. Somerset is probably a terrible one compared to, because they lost that power plant and
Oh, yeah.
They lost two power plants.
two power plants. And the contractor that stole everything left, Fall River too, because they're slightly different, but like Fairhaven might be a little bit better and Dayton Rehoboth.
Yeah, I think we were looking more localized, like just border wise, like we have Berkeley right there. But we could definitely we could cruise other.
I know Somerset's went way up because they lost the power.
Yeah,
So just mention that.
for sure.
Dayton, Rehoboth.
Yeah.
That
That
was
was
a
on
question
there.
there, yeah.
That was on there.
Swansea.
Fairhaven, maybe.
Swansea, maybe? It's got a lot of commercial.
Fairhaven's too, maybe the water, Fairhaven's fairly rural and stuff like that.
Honestly, usually in the master plans, they never really recommend like increasing or decreasing tax. It's just yeah.
Just something that jumped
That's
out.
a
But
whole lot.
something
Yeah,
like-
works.
just something that jumped like context.
Yeah. I think some of the things we're recommending might indirectly impact it, for the better, but yeah. I don't think we'll have a strategy that's we should manually,
Damn.
yeah. But yeah, just going back to the housing thing, we're kind of running into something similar in terms of unbuildable land in Carver. We're doing their housing production plan and they have a very similar issue as opposed to a state forest. They have all the cranberry bogs that are unbuildable. So we're looking at very similar strategies that we might be looking at with you guys.
Have you seen communities? So right now we have 175 feet frontage, 70,000 square feet. What is a duplex?
It's
300
it's
and-
slightly larger.
You have to add I think 40 or it's
Is it
Believe-
50?
Frontage is at 275 instead of 175?
I can look it up. I've never,
Curious to see how that would help if we just made that 175.
yeah.
For duplex as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's just an additional lot size requirement and also frontage. I just don't have the, I think it was like, it was like 50 feet of additional and then.
It wasn't 10,000, was it? I'm thinking of an ADU.
Might
For
be.
additional square footage.
Pull it up.
I don't actually think the ADU required an additional.
Yeah, we only have.
No,
require
our accessory apartment bylaw
Yeah.
doesn't require.
Oh, it doesn't, okay, I'm probably thinking of duplex.
Yeah, it's definitely duplex.
Two places we have in town, right?
Penny, I've
We
never
actually have that
go
number
through
too.
permits.
You do have that number?
Yeah.
I think it's three.
It's
definitely one on.
Yeah, it's one of the so.
Yeah, it's either land use or
Yeah.
I mean, according to the data, there's 131 units or 2 units. That's just based on what I could.
Oh, 2 units, so that's the existing Water Street has a bunch.
Does that include accessory apartments in that?
I don't think, it's whatever was in the assessors, there's like a unit count there. So I-
Oh,
I know ACS will specify if it's attached or detached, so I think the ADU would be considered attached. But-
yeah, we
this
only
guy-
allow cat.
No, I know. Yeah, cause that, yeah, that's from Warren Group.
I think we're ready to.
Okay, all right.
Start.
All right, everyone, we're back. So yeah, we're gonna talk through, some of the, early draft goals and strategies right now as well. And like I said, these are drafts, so nothing's been finalized yet. Just want to make sure that's thrown out there. So just to start, we're gonna, start with land use. So as we previously mentioned, our first land use goal is to focus development in chosen priority areas such as village centers and business corridors. So for the land use, our first strategy we have down to complete the passage of the section 3A compliant multi-family housing zoning district in the current PMUD. Our strategy B, promote future business growth in commercial centers along South Main Street, Braley Road, and Route 18. Strategy C, develop a civic center that provides key services and community space that unites the town. So pretty much what we're standing on right now, I think is what we were going with that. And strategy D, foster activity through appropriately scaled development in the designated village centers, utilizing the space for civic, cultural, and economic activity. So specifically for the MPC, we did have a few questions, specifically in terms of if you guys had any specific strategies that you might want to see implemented, like in our like draft goals, that we're kind of talking about now. And this is like a general question for like the entirety of the draft goals and strategies.
So you're talking like community stuff and whatnot?
Yeah, it's like very
Yeah,
much,
like, why can't Hadley Park be utilized more? Why can't we do like a food truck once a month or something? People love food trucks.
like do some like,
Yeah, like why can't, like, why can't we sell strawberries at a strawberry festival? Here's a question for everybody, but why can't there be, I don't know, why can't there be more like a fall festival?
Mhm.
Lakeside Festival is coming up, that's where you guys should plan to be, you ask for opportunities. So
Yeah.
make sure you get there, that's Memorial Day.
Yeah,
We tried last year.
Oh, yeah, they won't let you?
outside, no.
If you wanna go hang out.
Rough crowd.
There is a new community, 20 hours. But the town has just started.
Yeah, community program
I
director.
think it's to do more things like that.
Mhm,
She's out partnering and honoring what everybody.
Nice.
mhm.
Yeah, I don't know why they don't do food trucks, that would kill.
Yeah,
I know it would.
that's a good suggestion. I think that might line up a little bit more with like, so when we do future deep dives, we'll go into like cultural resources and that, like events and stuff like that. We'll definitely like play into that, but we'll definitely make note of that.
Food truck.
I gotcha.
Alright.
Any other comments or questions? Yes.
Yeah, just this week, the entrance ramp was flooded and we couldn't even get on 215.
Mhm.
Now, that's connected to Braley Road. Now, if you're talking about putting up a development on Brayley Road and there's already flooding there, taking away that land that would absorb water is only gonna make a flooding issue more serious.
No, that's definitely a fair point. So I think when we mean Brayley Road, like north to south, right, it's a pretty decent chunk of land, right? And you were talking about the on-ramp that's a little bit further north, closer to East Freetown
Yep.
Village Center.
Uh-huh.
So we can definitely make note of like, stormwater concerns down there. And and the flooding was as a result of like heavy rainfall or something, right?
No,
Yeah.
I was principal of Pulaski School in New Bedford,
Mhm.
and they started building 7 houses that bordered on my parking lot. And once they started digging for the houses, all the water and dirt just came right into my parking lot, and we were flooded for years.
Mhm.
And the result was, by taking away that land that would absorb the moisture, they didn't realize the impact it would have on Pulaski Park and houses and our parking lot and my school basement.
Mhm.
So that's why I'm just looking at your location and knowing I got stuck there this week,
Yeah,
getting onto the highway. It's not a good spot. I mean,
Well, from the planning board's point of view, if the developer came with a plan, they would have to show that they would not allow water that should be on that lot to go to other adjacent lots. They have
that's what
to
I was
support it.
told too. That's what I was told.
Mhm.
And they
They-
approved the 7 houses, and we had to fight it to get it down to 4.
we could potentially tie that in with
I would
strategy.
watch.
Yeah,
because,
I,
You know, one results in another and it impacts another and another,
For
you
sure.
know?
For sure, we could definitely tie that in, I'm thinking more specifically for like services and facilities, when we do that deep dive as well, that might be a good potential strategy, like stormwater management or something in that area,
Flooding.
yeah, for flooding, yeah, definitely.
I don't know if you've seen what's happened to Long Pond now. Oh, God, it's awful. People are thinking it's gonna end up like 2010 again, on a lot of those roads.
That's when Forge Pond disappeared in 2010.
Well, you can have what's up there.
No, we can't, unfortunately, they took it away, that's another story. I have a question then concerning, like, there's been a lot of discussion about lot sizes, frontage and whatnot, housing, you know, putting in, like, I guess if you wanna call me the curmudgeon townie, but does anybody want more housing? Like, who wants more housing?
I,
I mean, I realize you got that 3A unit thing,
no,
but,
that's a good point, I
I
think
mean,
generally
I
like.
don't want any neighbors.
We've gotten a lot of feedback that it's not necessarily like general housing, it's more of like specific types of housing for, like you said, like seniors or like first time home buyers. Like the town might be sort of lacking in that respect, so that's some of the perceptions of some people in town. And also potentially being priced out of town, I think that was another concern.
Which I guess town curmudgeon, but isn't that the point of living in Freetown? Like people move out of Fall River and New Bedford. Cause they have decent jobs, they move to Freetown because they want their kids in smaller schools and, you know, we want the nice country life away from like.
I mean, you could still have like small town character with some of those things.
If I can just
Yeah.
interject, so what he's saying, those concerns were not from people outside of town trying to
Yeah.
move in.
Yeah,
Those concerns were from people who live in town, who want to stay in town, whether it be seniors, someone's kid that came back from college that still has to live at home because there's no apartments, there's no house that they can afford to move out to, so they have to stay at home or move out of Freetown. So that's where that feedback is coming from.
Yeah, I think the example that's coming to mind, seniors that are kind of aging out of the house that they're living in, like a large, single family home that their kids are no longer living there, they're empty nesters, and they might want to downsize. There might not be enough options for them in Freetown to potentially stay as a result, because they might be on a fixed income, they might not be able to afford their mortgage, stuff like that. Yeah,
So it's more about smart growth.
exactly. Yeah, it's very intentional growth, right? Like it's looking for very specific ways to maximize potential growth without just doing it for the sake of growth, right? Yeah, because like you said, a big concern residents is like environmental health and maintaining natural features in town. If people are just developing willy-nilly, that's kind of at risk, right? So it's being very smart. In town.
thank you.
Yes, what is the Community Preservation Act, build housing?
Excuse me, your name for the record, please?
Oh, this is Jeffrey Turback, 20 Grand Dean Road.
Thank you.
So the CPA, you're asking about?
CPA, correct.
Yeah,
Yeah, so this says build, affordable housing near such amenities as foot attachment, no park. What's that all about? Why would we want to adopt a plan like
a
that?
CPA. So it, basically, and feel free to correct me if I'm missing anything. Essentially, it's the fund that the town would be able to set up to do some of these, kind of smart growth decisions as we were talking about. So potentially like incentivizing some more affordable housing, purchasing land that you might want to preserve, stuff like that. There's been, I can't remember off the top of my head how many of our municipalities in Serpents region have adopted a CPA, but it's a pretty widespread practice to go and do this for those reasons, for smart growth purposes, for land preservation, like.
Okay, so they will leave intact the, wood pastures.
So to clarify for everyone, this is a strategy under the second housing goal, create more affordable house, blah, blah, blah. So I think the idea was near existing amenities. So these are just examples of parks. Like we could just take those out, but the parks would be the same, no development.
Yeah, they would be built on.
I would like to, I'm gonna clarify the Community Preservation Act. So Freetown did vote on this a while ago, but turned it down, which is very common in a lot of communities. They turn it down and then later realize that, oh, that could actually be useful. Community Preservation Act is a very small property tax surcharge that would go to a dedicated fund for kind of three purposes, either open space, affordable housing, and I'm seeing one more. I think those like in like recreation. So you can't use those funds for other things. They're going for these purposes. And the reason that this was created was because a lot of towns have many competing like funding demands and expenses to keep the lights on. And it's really hard to fund some of these like really important things usually. So by kind of creating this dedicated fund, that's a way to actually improve parks or provide affordable housing. And it's up to each community. Sorry, I forgot. The third one is historic preservation. So it's really often hard for communities to, raise a bond measure to fund these things. So this is just one way. And the state actually matches a lot of the funding that towns raise. It's just a recommendation that we are kind of providing. It's another thing to explore. But I think it'd be, Chris, do you mind just going through the other goals?
Yeah, of course. So we're just gonna swing back to land use real quick. I think we have one more question for the MPC. So kind of in the same vein of specific strategies as the MPC, do you guys have any anecdotal evidence for any specific zoning recommendations or zoning amendments that you guys would potentially like to have as a strategy in one of these land use goals?
We haven't talked on the planning board about, we've talked about some zoning for existing housing areas that have dense. The restrictions on adding building an accessory apartment or something is such that it just can't be done based on our current zoning. So we've talked about that a little bit, but nothing else like your cluster zoning that you had there we haven't discussed anything in the past couple of years in that area.
Gotcha. I think we do mention ADUs as a potential strategy too. That's one of the goals. I forget if we had it under land use or housing, but we did mention it in potential.
We're trying to amend that
Yeah.
bylaw to make ADUs by right in areas and then in front of town meeting this year.
Okay.
ADU is those units for 3A, is that right?
No,
No.
ADU stands for accessory dwelling unit, so it also means
Okay, this.
accessory apartment, in-law
Okay,
apartment.
cool. I would love one of those. But concerning the 300 units or whatever we were talking about, can those be combined with senior living? Like, is that like something that could be done?
Where
Like-
did you pull the 300 units from? Sorry.
Well, I'm just talking about like 3A, whatever
Oh,
you
okay,
said,
gotcha.
like a 20, 200 units. I'm just,
And kind of tie it to.
yeah, like,
senior
could they
housing.
both, like, could it be one area where there could be part, like, is that feasible to?
I don't know if they can, mandate age restriction in it necessarily.
Yeah.
But if a developer decided to, do like a 55 and up community, I don't think like there's.
It's
anything-
usually based on developer or is that a town thing?
I think it's by developer. Yeah.
Yeah, to clarify, the zoning can't say that it's only 55 plus, but if a developer who wants to build a retirement, like a 55 plus community, they can do that.
Right.
And it just has to, like, does that make sense?
Yeah, so it
So
would,
we could, in theory, like.
you could, but it'd probably be hard, because if they wanted to just do senior living at 55 plus, then you'd have to tell, people that are looking for housing, no, you can't, because you're not 55, like,
Yeah, it's a balance between
Yeah.
developers, some of them, see
I
a
was just wondering if
market
it could all
or.
be in one
So
area. Since it's.
The 3A takes that out, 'cause I know the PMOD currently has density increases for 55 and older, so the 3A is just everyone now, is that?
Yeah.
Correct,
Yeah.
it cannot be age restricted, the
Correct.
district.
Right, yeah.
But like Philip said, it doesn't preclude a developer from coming in and saying, hey, we want to build a
At the same
55.
time, what, yeah.
Yeah.
It might be lucrative here with the senior population to build.
Well, there was one on the drawing board, but got pulled. They started it, right? They started.
They
site
did,
work, site
yeah.
work, Yeah,
And they got the permitting for it, but I think the owner wants to sell the property.
yeah.
Any other questions before we move on or comments? So our last land use goal, protect Freetown small character by preserving open space and allowing for modest growth in more rural, agricultural and suburban areas of town. The first recommendation, or strategy that we have for this goal is, develop an open space residential design, OSRD, as we previously talked about. Bylaw to preserve natural environments while producing housing. As it stands right now, Freetown does not have an OSRD in name. So this definitely is something that we wanted to highlight, for you guys to, potentially look at as well. So strategy B, reevaluate minimum lot sizes, kind of like we were talking about, frontage requirements for parcels in the residential and general zoning districts. Strategy C, update village business and village residential zoning to attract appropriate development. Strategy D, update the town sign bylaw to encourage signage that complements the rural, historical, and natural characteristics of Freetown and is content neutral. Introduce more flexibility to the adult retirement community or ARC bylaw to expand housing options for seniors. So that is another senior specific recommendation we had in there as well. So we also had a few more questions for the MPC on these specifically. Let's see, and Victoria, this might be a you question. To the best of your knowledge, do you know if Freetown has updated its, I believe that signage bylaw to comply with Reed v. Gilbert? I think it was like a 2015 court ruling that mandated signs had to be like content neutral. Correct me if I'm wrong, Philip. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head. I've actually never been through permitting for the signed bylaw since I've been here.
Gotcha.
In 3 years, but I can take a look tomorrow.
It was redone after 2015. but
It was?
I took that into account through the planning board.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
But I'll double check.
All right, solid. Yeah, and if it turns out that that's already like in line with it, then
Well, it's
we'll
not in the lingo, what's,
Maybe not.
what does that mean? Whatchamacallit,
I forget-
content neutral, what is content neutral?
So basically,
Vote.
what happened was.
Are we talking he, she,
Yeah.
politics, what?
So the Supreme Court basically said you can't have different rules based on the content of the sign. The main issue was like communities were allowing certain sizes, like certain types of signs to have different sizes, like, oh, this sign can be a lot larger, but if it's like a sign with political messaging or something, it can't be. So it's like, it's just,
That
that
like
was-
standardizes it now.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
It gives communities a little bit less control over regulating signage. It's a super minor,
Yeah,
thing.
okay,
And-
just curious.
But I do want
Make sure
to
we're neutral.
open this up to the MPC especially. We do say stuff about like reevaluate minimum lot size and frontage, and I just don't know if there's like, should we? Do you think it makes sense in town? Should we just keep it at the 70,000, 100, frontage,
175,
175?
yes.
Even the minimum size we put this, the P mud was, we bumped it up to 70. The recommended was, the 40 was the first, number we got back from Surface, so.
And I did hear you were, what about like the duplex regulations? I don't know if you feel like that ad is like too much, or it could be something worth reconsidering.
Or if it's applicable to other housing types besides duplexes as well, that you might be looking at.
We can certainly look at it, going forward, but. Something we'll bring up with all the other little items we've got, starting to rack up.
Okay, we could definitely keep it on there for now, but, unless you guys decide otherwise. We'll keep it on.
Okay, I mean, what's the goal? When's the plan? to Get this final plan,
Yeah.
the end of the year?
Yeah, we're gonna start writing, I believe, in the summertime.
I would like to keep zoning all the same. Personally. For the same size lots, frontage and everything.
Second,
I have a question. If right now it's a minimum of 1.6 acres for a house, you're talking 261 units. So if my math is correct, that's 417 acres of land if we kept it the way it's currently issued. So does that mean we're gonna have to change all our zoning, all our variances, everything the town is made up to get down to putting more than one unit per 1.6 acres? And then my second question would be, if we do this to take care of 3A, is it gonna keep on going so that anybody can come in and say, I wanna build on a half an acre lot? You let it get by for 3A, you better let it get by for me.
So Claire,
And then we
sorry.
end up back in
Oh,
the city.
Yeah. So 3A is very, very contained in that tiny little area next to the station, the PMUD overlay district. We can pull up like where that is. What we're trying to kind of talk about right now is basically the 99% rest of town. So the question is like, do we think that 1.6 acre minimum lot size makes sense? It seems like the consensus is, yeah, we want to keep this rural feel. We don't necessarily want to build a lot more suburban sprawl housing around town. And the calculation is a little bit complicated because if there's an existing lot that is under 70,000 square feet, you can put a single family house on it if it's like grandfathered in, as long as it follows all the other dimensional requirements. And that was the majority of the kind of houses that like were in that little build out model. And again, that's just the capacity. That's just saying if Freetown developed every single inch that was allowed to be developed, that's what would happen.
Any other questions before we move on? So moving on to housing. So like we said previously, our first goal for housing, produce a range of housing types that meet the needs of seniors, first-time home buyers, families with children, and other types of families. Strategy A, explore updated zoning to build a range of market rate missing middle housing to meet the demands of young families, the senior population, and first-time home buyers. Strategy B, encourage accessory dwelling units, ADU, and smaller housing typologies by adopting more flexible residential zoning and reducing requirements for ADUs.
That's what I was gonna say, so. You were talking about zoning, you
That answers
you
my
agree,
question.
but that's what I'm saying, so that these ADUs come into zoning? Cause you know, there's all these new little like compartment, like apartments, people, you can order them on Amazon. Like, people plopping in their yard for their kids, like, you can't do that right now, right? Like,
No, you have to, it has to be attached to a single family house.
okay, but is that something you're considering
We're
changing the zoning,
It's,
or?
we are considering, including having these, detached as well, like above a garage or something like that. And having the ones that are attached to your house by right, so you don't have to go through.
And that's separate from the frontage and the acreage?
Well,
Or it would be?
Yes.
Yeah, but I mean, you still have to meet the restriction, the building code, the
Right, I'm talking
septic
like I
and all
already
that
have
sort
an
of thing.
existing house, and if I wanted to plop one of those foolish things for a kid to live in, you
It's,
know?
well, it's gotta be attached, or it
Okay.
has to be, yeah.
Right, as of now, but it's something you're potentially.
We're trying to make it a little bit easier for these to become more popular.
I'm just
not
thinking
many.
hypotheticals, I don't want my kid living with me. If she asks, I can say, no, you can't, they won't let you.
Some questions for the MPC, this might be going a little bit ahead, but in terms of the adult retirement communities, do you guys have like specific sites in mind that like you kind of envision for a potential adult retirement community popping up in town?
Well, no, because there's only, the requirement's 10 acres, so.
Well, I didn't know if
Yeah.
like there was a potential area that you guys were like, oh, like this would be great to have here. Not necessarily lining up with the current zoning, but like anecdotally, like.
Piedmont area.
There's a church in New Bedford that just came before us last month that has a parcel over in East Freetown. And they're looking at putting in retirement housing, school in there if they could, but it's all, they first broached the subject about 20 years ago in town here. And some of the zoning has changed, but that's the only area that I know of in town,
Gotcha.
right on the Bedford line, Route 140 and the train.
I think that's what, Philip had showed on the map previously.
Oh, that yellow circle?
Yes.
Okay.
Speaking more generally, again, what other specific barriers do you think prevent housing production in town, and how can we remove them and or incentivize new units?
Especially, do you remember the one?
Yeah.
If you're kind of complying with FEMA, then you don't really need to develop anything else in town unless you feel like it helps, like create a little bit more vibrant village center. So that's just, these are like questions, we want everyone to think about is like,
Yeah,
we
which
could
is-
just
which
allow
is-
housing in that little quarantine area, or we could kind of have a little bit other kind of smaller measures around town.
Right, which is excellent, you guys all thinking about it, but as you mentioned, the point is, none of us can get together to talk about it, what we're all thinking about, because I'm sitting here thinking I can talk for an hour, but I don't think none of you wanna hear me, so.
But the other thing is the data you're getting back from the town, we wanna keep it rural, we wanna keep large house lots, well, a large house lot is expensive, so you're gonna tend to build an expensive house on it. So you can't build all these small houses and apartments and things, kind of conflicting data, so.
It's
Big
trying to
problem.
strike that balance,
That's
right?
right, yeah.
And I'm here for public safety, so I'll speak on it, but you start putting this 3A housing in, you start talking about these senior population centers, seniors tax public safety immensely. So that's something that you have to really take into consideration in this little town, right? Because we're already spread really thin and we've worked to get better, but this 3A housing is extremely worrying for us because of the amount of people. And not only, I don't know how to say this politically correct, so I'm not politically correct, but Lakeville is dealing with this and they go to that housing 2 to 3 times a day for medical reasons that, again, I'm treading very lightly here. So, I mean, you
We're all gonna
have.
get there.
I was gonna say, I was just gonna say that, we're all gonna get there, man, you know.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying elderly for the three.
For Lakeville.
I'm talking about Lakeville and what the train has brought to Lakeville. So we have a town with one ambulance in it that is staffed.
I will say that,
So-
it doesn't exist in a vacuum too. So like, we'll talk about, like with the ED goals and strategies, like this will help mitigate potential shortfalls in service as a result of more people coming to town by having more tax revenue coming to town as well. So I think
I
it's,
wasn't treading lightly about the elderly thing. Just so I'm clear.
I think you're politically correct.
You're good. All right.
but,
I was
Charlie,
letting you slide before you did it.
Charlie.
I think what everyone has to realize is that anyone can look at one item and say, you could say, I don't want recreational, or areas in my town because people get hurt. And then it's gonna cause an ambulance run. Or I don't want, something else, because it might be a public safety issue.
No,
But, okay, I understand what you're saying, but I think we're all in a world, and sometimes we have to take a couple of hits.
oh, I'm willing to take the hits. I'm here to bring up points like that. I'm just bringing it up that
But,
I'm not worried about a kid breaking his leg at Memorial Park.
well, but you're worried about an elderly person falling and bumping their
Charlie,
head.
I think we're missing the point with the
And not
elderly
just
thing.
one
I'm
elderly
not,
person,
no.
but it can build a house.
I'm not,
Just say it,
50
you're
elderly
worried about
families.
overdoses.
I'm worried about what the train is going to bring in here.
Well,
I'm not worried about the old people, because we
it's-
love taking care of, but that's what we do, like, that's what we're.
We can handle it,
I'm-
just say it, just tell
But
us exactly.
it's the way of the world.
I'm saying that what the
And if-
train,
if
what
you-
the train
you're
has
not
brought to
gonna- you're not
Lakeville
gonna-
is multiple calls a day.
guys, I'm gonna
No,
bring us back, sorry.
No,
Yeah. All of your feelings on it are valid, definitely, but let's.
bring it
No, that's fair, that's fair.
I'm not into a 90.
No, I got you. I'm just saying, let's bring it back into the discussion of the goals and strategies, right? So,
Gotcha.
so if we're good on this specific goal, we'll move on to the next housing. For this next one, create more affordable income restricted housing that maximizes access to services and minimizes impacts on the environment in existing neighborhoods. Yes.
I'm not bringing up the last conversation, but, so we're talking about the zoning where we can build housing and some other thing, and as you can see, we have limited open areas, so to his point, if we do have to expand on our current services, where does that leave the town to build something if these areas are now, getting filled up with multiple houses? I know that's not an easy question to answer, but how does a town expand if they have no more land either?
Well, town land is gonna have to put a station at some point in.
When we run out is what I'm saying, so we're, like, there's no,
So maybe one of the, I don't know if it, one of the goals in the plan would be for the town to acquire land in, where are you saying, Asona?
Well, a Sonnet, right, houses, is big enough to house one fire, right? You can't even fit an ambulance in there. So if you put my point is, if you put 3A housing in a Sonnet down on the Fall River line, you're gonna have to put infrastructure there to take care of it.
Right,
Because your second ambulance, so our main ambulance is manned right there, right? So now when that ambulance goes in this call that we just went on, now you have a problem at 3A on South Main Street at the Fall River line. That ambulance now people have to come from home now, because when it's not staffed,
oh, okay.
you gotta go and get an ambulance in East Freetown, and now you have to drive all the way across, and this could be anybody, it could be my parents on Richmond Road now that need this ambulance, my point is 3A housing is gonna bring a lot of people, right? Stop and Shop brought a lot of people, all these things that have come to town have access, and I just would bring up the point that if this stuff does happen, the town does need, like, to Nick's point, the town's gonna need a spot to put an ambulance in the summer. It doesn't have a spot for an ambulance in the summer.
That's a really good point. I think that's very much tied. I think that's very much tied to the services and facilities, kind of portion of the master plan. So like, we can take note of it now and definitely include some strategy for that one. If we can bring it back to you for that specific deep dive as well. It's definitely a good point to bring up, making sure infrastructure is in place for anything like that.
More of those maps where you have the business, industrial and things like that, if we have public service included on that as well.
Gotcha, gotcha. So the, oh, yeah.
Yeah, just one question. I'm gonna help my buddy out over there. You're looking at the elderly, but also have you thought about the impact it would have on the schools? Now, I experienced when they changed the Lord Phillip apartments in New Bedford from luxury apartments to subsidized housing. The impact on the schools was astronomical. So I want to make sure that you also bring up that point. And also, I don't know if any of you have been on Chase Road in the morning or Route 18 when the buses are going down the roads, they can't get anywhere. So if you're bringing in 261 units, and a lot of these, as you mentioned, are gonna have children, where are you gonna put the buses? You're gonna have a big problem on Chase Road again.
Yeah, the multi-part answer to that question. Definitely good concern.
Please keep that in mind.
So in terms of like school population, like we've seen, especially with Freetown and probably region wide too, we've seen a steady decline in school population. So I think that's something important to note. And in terms of like the transportation angle of not being able to get like adequate access to a road, for example, that might be a good,
There are a lot of single lane roads.
yeah, that
You
might,
go into the dump, you got a single lane.
and you said that was Chase Road, right? So maybe that,
was awful.
so maybe we could bring that, so that's another subset of, like, the master plan is the transportation side. So maybe, we can include, a recommendation or a, strategy having to do with,
Busing.
adequate, like, yeah, stuff like
Roads
that.
have buses.
Just to elaborate on that, we lost the, stone bridge that was in the, built in the 1800s in Sonnet, and that really put a burden trying to get from Sonnet to the other side of town.
Mhm.
And what kind of, plan would be in place there, certainly put a lot of burden on.
Yeah, get ready.
Yeah, we could tie that in with transportation as well, kind of tying in with adequate circulation, stuff like that, definitely. So, if there's not any other questions, I'm just gonna continue on with the housing stuff. So our, strategy A for this particular goal, update Freetown's 2017 housing production plan. Usually those run for about 5 years post adoption of the plan, so it's starting to get a little outdated, that's why we put it on here. As we previously mentioned as well, adopt the Community Preservation Act.
What's the housing production plan? What is that?
So basically that's basically a 5-year plan that's talking about, increasing housing production in town. Like, of course, that's what its name is, right? But essentially it's a smaller version of the master plan, but specifically geared toward housing. So it's looking at kind of long-term planning for housing production as opposed to all aspects of the town, right?
You certainly feed in 3A if that passes into that.
Well, that can definitely play into it as well, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's definitely why we included it on there. Like I said, it's 5 years have been kind of up for a few years now, so it's starting to get a little outdated. It definitely was a plentiful like inspiration for some strategies in here. But yeah, I wanted to also note too for the CPA strategy. So that one we're also planning on potentially including as other strategies, I believe under natural cultural resources and open space as well, because there's that huge tie in there with the CPA and interacting with those two elements as well. So that will most likely be included in those sections as well, unless the NPC thinks that just housing would be sufficient for that. So this next one, explore adopting an incentive or inclusionary zoning bylaw that would apply to larger projects to increase affordable housing stock. Strategy D, create affordable housing units on properties acquired by a tax title. So that might actually potentially tie in with kind of the discussion of having sufficient institutional facilities for like an ambulance or fire, like that could be potentially a strategy for that we could probably tie into services and facilities as well.
wonder if we have any data on what we acquire per year on tax title.
I'm sure the assessor's database has that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Strategy E, work with Freetown, or as we previously said, work with the Freetown Housing Authority to become more active in affordable housing advocacy and other activities. So yeah, any questions, comments on the last, housing goal and strategies?
Is senior housing like condo units? Is that normally what it is?
It could be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it could, it
So
ranges.
is it really that much cheaper? Is it cheaper because the taxes are so much lower on a condo unit? Like when we say we want to keep seniors in town, like I fully agree, like my parents live here, my family lives here. But do these elderly units, how do they save the elderly? Like what?
Yeah, so if they are affordable, okay, so typically a development would come, right? It has maybe, let's just say it has 30 units or something. Usually there's a kind of requirement in a lot of adult retirement community bylaws to have some of them set aside for affordable units, so you can't have assets or make above a certain amount. A lot of them are market rate units. I'm gonna be honest, they are kind of expensive, especially if they're new.
Well, I know Lakeville's put in a bunch, right? And to get into them, you need to,
Mortgage a house.
yeah, mortgage a house.
Yeah, my,
So what are they saving? is my question.
My mother-in-law works at one too. I think it's like, the goal is to have it be more affordable, but there are those that end up being a bit more expensive due to like the amenities they provide. They might have a swimming pool, they might have classes, stuff like that. But it definitely depends on the particular like community though, in the development that takes place.
Usually the benefit is there's a lot less like
God, word.
yard work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're downsizing, right?
Yeah, and there's
Yeah.
like, usually they're single story, so.
Right.
It's like an improved mobility access, and depending on the level, you can obviously have assisted living and then like nursing.
Right.
But an example is Oak Point in Middleborough,
Mhm.
which is a massive action area. What they do is they have modular homes. They don't take them off the trailers. So they are not a house. They are a trailer. So they are much, you pay excise tax. You don't pay property tax on the house, you pay excise tax on the house. That's one of the ways that they're more affordable.
Right.
They're also, the land is, probably on a lot of maybe 4,000 or 5,000 square feet. So that's another way that they are less expensive.
We're gonna move on now, unless there's any other comments or questions. So we're gonna move on to the ED, example, and kind of ahead of us talking, a bit more about goals and strategies, also a question for the MPC. Is there an appetite for industrial development in town? And if so, like what particular area, of interest is there?
Industrial zones.
No. Just something to think about too, that it's not a one-time, like, we're not gonna include anything in there. So if you guys have anything that you think of later too, feel free to reach out to Victoria, she'll interface with us about it. Definitely, so just going ahead with ED. The first goal that we mentioned is support vibrant town centers in Sonnet and East Freetown villages. The first strategy, strategy A, implement placemaking strategies for village centers, including signage and events. Strategy B, work with property owners in the village centers to spur economic growth, including in the South Main Street business and the East Freetown business districts. Any questions, comments on that? Moving on. The second goal, expand key infrastructure services such as water and sewer to meet demands for economic development and make Freetown an attractive place to live and do business. Strategy A, work closely with the city of New Bedford to create a new wastewater intermunicipal agreement. Strategy B, work with property owners to redevelop key parcels in the PMUD. C, explore funding opportunities to expand infrastructure such as municipal water and wastewater lines to key locations to jumpstart economic development.
So for the first one for A, I would say to add City of Fall River to that as well, because on the other side is Fall River.
For sure. Any other comments, questions? Moving on. So goal 3, support existing institutions and the local business community by incentivizing existing businesses to stay while attracting new firms. So strategy A, continue fostering growing industries in town such as construction, healthcare, and professional services. Attract new businesses based on community priorities such as grocery stores, pharmacies, and restaurants. Strategy C, create a user-friendly development and permitting guide to facilitate all types of business development, multifamily and mixed-use housing. Strategy D, support continued operation and growth of home-based businesses by creating a home-based business starter guide. Any questions, comments for that?
Home-based businesses, do you have a number in town? Do you have?
We haven't yet, but we've noticed in the region, there's, I'm thinking of Dayton specifically, they have many like home-based businesses. And anecdotally, I've attended some events where home-based business owners had attended. It was, I think it was a Dayton Berkeley business event at like the Bristol Aggie or something. And they were talking about how, although there are a lot of home-based businesses, there's not like a clear path to how to establish yourself in town. Like there's not a lot of interfacing with the town necessarily. So that might be something in particular that Freetown might want to look into if you guys hear of a lot of residents who are home-based business owners.
Like what kind of home-based businesses are we talking?
That's what I was.
Sellers was something that came up in Dayton, so kind of creative arts,
Yeah,
right? Artisans,
I think home nurses too
Yeah.
is another one or something like that.
yeah. So not people like doing explosives or something, but
Not making radar
Like
conditions out of a garage or
crafters
something.
and stuff, like people that do crafts,
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, that was our last goal.
And they're registered businesses or are they?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
And potentially getting businesses, like I said, businesses that might not be aware of the process to get into the pipeline of becoming like.
you're thinking like tax wise, right? Like registered business.
No,
like
just
commercial tax.
curious what the basis was. What about Airbnb?
I don't know if that would be
Pick up any of that
considered.
In any of this data?
We haven't looked up rental properties, but your information, I don't think you
Really look this short term.
current rentals.
Yeah, I know we're doing, or we're planning a data poll on that, not specifically for Freetown, but it might be worthwhile to include them, or include you guys as well in that poll. So yeah, I'm gonna pass it back, yeah.
I just wanted to make sure for the continued engagement. So just so you guys know, right now, what we have scheduled is to go actually to Free Lake Middle School to do kind of information on what a master plan is and engage kids on creating like what they want their own town to look like. And we hope from you guys, we hope to go to the Strawberry Festival again. And we hope to hear any other opportunities. So I've tried to reach out to like the PTO. If you guys have like any Zoom meetings that regularly occur, we'd be happy to come and just do a brief presentation to introduce what's going on. We want to do these kind of traveling workshops to get to hear as much from you about anything that we can. And like I said, we're gonna have 3 listening sessions. So all of the 3 questions will be answered in April. So at the planning board specifically, so we'll have information put out for that. So we hope to see everybody who asked about it today
Can
there.
I interject?
Yeah.
So just to give some exact dates for anyone who's
Thank you.
interested, so on March 25th, Serped and myself will be giving a presentation to the Board of Selectmen. And we'll also be, publicizing that, so if any interested member of the public wants to attend, they can attend as well. And then the planning board also has to hold a public hearing on it, on the actual bylaw itself, so there's an opportunity on April 2nd. As well, if you can't make the 25th, to come and voice, your thoughts as well.
That is the high school.
No, public hearing, I mean, that would be at the police station, that would most likely be at the police station. I do, if you aren't able to come to the information sessions, but you still wanna voice your concerns, I do have a card if you wanna stop by after the meeting. You can email or call my office. Thanks.
So yeah, thank you again, everybody, for coming. I didn't think we had questions on the economic development side. I don't know if we asked any questions for that, but anything else? again, thanks for.
We'll stick around for a little bit. We're gonna reach out about the next deep dive, which will cover.
There is a facility on that.
Actually, so what we can leave it up to you guys. The other topics we have are transportation and circulation, services and facilities, natural and cultural resources, and open space. And we typically just we have two more deep dive like here. Usually like transportation and service facilities makes a lot of sense together. So that, covers everything from roads, doing more sidewalks, and then also
Like
Yeah.
town and.
town services.
Yeah.
like The library, fire, police, trash, sewer, water, and all of that.
Same type of format you'll present.
Yeah, we'll
later.
present like a lot of the kind of more nitty gritty data, present the draft goals and strategies, and have discuss those.
Do you need anything from the MPC before this next meeting?
If you have more, thoughts after kind of bowling on some of these draft goals and strategies for land use, housing and development, that would be great, especially also for both the ones who did. We can pass that along.
Okay.
And so same idea, the next meeting, the deep dive, you'll come up with another
Yes.
draft, okay?
Are we scheduling that now or you'll reach out?
We can schedule it now. Or is it easier to just reach out?
What's it, I mean, you're all
I
here
got a
now.
calendar
and
right in front of me, so.
Well, we're
Alright.
missing two people, right?
We'll reach,
One, we're
One
missing
person.
Trevor.
we'll just reach out,
You-
like.
Okay.
tomorrow.
Okay, all right,
It'll be about in a month or so,
okay,
just because we want to get a bulk of our work done, like the engagement part before, the kind of the state provided funding.
oh,
deadline.
yes, the grant.
And then, we will provide kind of the rest of the funding to write the report over the summer. And then kind of like do a final draft review in the fall.
Okay,
So deep dives will be done by the end of May, June?
Yeah,
The end of June, say, okay.
is there anything you need from the
Nope,
committee at
I
all,
think-
or myself?
yes.
Okay,
we can do the various other NPC business.
Does the
okay,
board have anything else to ask? Any other questions from the audience?
Peanut gallery?
Peanut gallery? Cool, okay, well, thank you for that presentation. We will continue on, that must have been 1 and 2, right? Master plan update
Yes.
is the next step. Okay, item 3, minutes from, and set, okay. Set next meetings, actually, we're gonna do that.
Yep.
So that's gone.
Yep.
Minutes from, November 28th meeting. Anybody have a chance to read them? Any problems?
I'll make a motion to approve.
So I hear a motion and a second to approve, the minutes as printed. Any questions on that? So all those in favor signify in the affirmative. Aye. Opposed in the negative. Abstention. Cool. Last but not least, any other business to come before the master plan committee?
I don't have anything,
Nothing
thank you.
secret?
No.
Nope. Motion to adjourn. Motion's made to adjourn and second, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Thank you very much.